say the game is getting old. Monday morning and your coffee's cold. Life is not what you want it to be.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to A New Direction. My name is Jay Izzo, and oh, you know what? I get so stoked and excited when I get a book that comes across my big, huge paw-like hands, okay? And I get this book, right? And all of a sudden, not only is it absolutely fabulous, spectacular, outstanding, wonderful, amazing, crazily good, it just speaks right to your heart. And doesn't just speak right to your heart, it speaks to your brain, it speaks to your emotions, and it's just one of those books that it's like, if you think of here, let's do it this way. Think of your life as an onion, right? And it's got all those layers, and then somebody takes a needle, right? And it is able to penetrate all those layers right down to the middle, okay? That's what this book does. The book's called Thriving, Not Surviving. Her name is Gina Gardiner. She comes to us from the UK today. But I'm going to tell you what, before we get to her, we're going to do what we always do, but man, the book's great. I'm just telling you, the book is great. It is absolutely fabulous book. You're going to love it. You're going to want to get it. You're going to want to, yeah, it's just amazing. But let's do what we do every week. Look, we are dealing with really crazy times right now, right? And if you're in the United States, and I know I've got listeners all over the world, but if you're in the United States, we just got weird stuff going on, right? I mean, we already got a pandemic going on, and then we got all this other crazy stuff happening, right? And it's just awful. All of it is awful. There's not one part of it that's good, okay? But you know what we are? We are four-part people. We are physical people, we're mental people, we're emotional people, and we're spiritual people. And the thing about us as four-part people is, you know, we have to check in with ourselves to find out where we're at. Because if we're not checking in with ourselves on a regular basis where we're at, what happens is we get into what I like to think of as drift, meaning that we'll just drift if we're not checking back in where we're at. We'll just drift. It's kind of what we do. We just go out there and we just drift away. And so I don't want us to drift, which is why I do this check-in every week with you in the 4 areas of your life, because it really is necessary. And I know, like, some of you binge listen to this show and you go, Jay, I hear this. I've listened to 5 shows. You've done the same thing over and over again. You know what? Then what did you change in those shows, right? So let's just go through these really quickly. Scale of 1 to 10. 1 is miserable. 10 is outstanding, right? Physically, how are you doing? Right, and it encompasses several things, right? It's how are you eating? How are you exercising? Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting enough sleep? Right? Scale of 1 to 10, how are you doing with those areas? How would you rate yourself? 5 is average, right? And then the big question is, okay, whatever that number is. And by the way, I don't care what the number is. I mean, I do, but I'm not trying to embarrass you. If you're a 3 or a 2. Right? Look, I'm not embarrassing you. What I want you to do is I just want you to get to the next number. That's all I want you to do. I want you to get from a 2 to a 3. I want you to get from a 3 to a 4. I don't need you to get to a 2 to a 10. So what do you need to change right now? What can you change right now to get to the next number? All right? And then we're going to ask that in all 4 areas. All right? So you have your physical number. Regardless of what it is, you got your physical number. Great. Okay? There's your physical. 1. So now the second number, the mental number. Really very simple. What are you consuming that is making you better? What are you consuming? What are you reading? What are you reading? What are you consuming? What are you doing with your mind that is increasing your wisdom or your knowledge or your understanding on some level that is helping you be better, whether it's be better at what you do, be better in life, be better in the world, be a better person. What are you doing mentally to do that, right? And how are you doing in that same scale range? 1 miserable, 10 outstanding. How are you doing in improving you mentally, right? And by the way, you know, there's so many things you can do. You can read great books like Thriving, the Thriving book, Thriving Not Surviving by Gina. You can take up an instrument. You can learn a foreign language. There's all sorts of things that you can do, right? None of it, as Gina's going to tell us, none of that works if you don't take action with it, right? So part of it is not just consuming the information, it's also taking action. That's how we improve. All right, so you got two numbers. You got a physical number, a mental number. Now let's talk about the emotional number. A lot of times we psychological professionals like to refer to things like emotional intelligence or emotional quotients or things like that. And basically what we're saying here is we're asking you to rate yourself on a scale of that same scale, 1 to 10. How well are you able to control your emotions under stress? And by the way, we're under stress, so how well are you able to do that? And then the second thing is how well are you able to tap into the emotions of others, right? It's a tough question. Can you really understand? Can you really walk in the shoes of another person, right? That's the question, right? And do they believe it, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being miserable, 10 being outstanding, how are you doing in terms of walking in someone else's shoes? How are you doing in terms of being able to keep your emotions in check? Being able to intentionally say, I'm not stressed about this. Being emotionally, intentionally say, I can deal with this in the right way. That I'm not being explosive or I'm not being in a grenade or a tank or whatever you might be, right? How are you doing that? Right? Scale of 1 to 10. How you doing? And then what do you got to do to improve? So much of this is intention. Sometimes you just got to learn about emotions to make that happen. All right. And then finally, that fourth area. So you got three numbers: physical, mental, emotional. The fourth area is the spiritual. And let me tell you about the spiritual area, because you know what? The spiritual is really very simple. If you remove the physical, the mental, and the emotional, remove all that. Whatever you have left, that's spiritual, right? And spiritual is that area of life we cannot explain. I cannot scientifically explain it to you. And by the way, science will never be able to explain it to you, because it is a realm that touches us, that hits us in a way that is so unique and so different. Sometimes they'll say music touches my soul. Sometimes people believe in God. Sometimes people go to nature. Sometimes people believe in meditation. There's a variety of things that we do that fulfill us. If we add the word faith, meaning that we believe in something beyond ourselves, in this case, that's spiritual. So my question is, how's it working for you? On a scale of 1 to 10, how's it working? How's it going? What do you need to do to change? I mean, if you do believe in God, I mean, how's that relationship going? I mean, what do you need to change? If you believe in nature and that's what you believe is a spiritual touch that touches you, what do you need to change? Right? So those are the four areas of your life. And those four areas, think of them as the legs of a chair, right? And if the chair is uneven, right, then what happens is sitting in there causes us a lot of discomfort in terms of our posture. By the same token, if the chair is too low, because all four of those areas are too low, we're sitting in a low chair and it's really, we can't eat from a normal table. So the whole idea is to bring the chair up to the right height and bring them up together in balance. And speaking of someone who is totally in balance and has her chair at the right spot, her name is Gina Gardiner, and she is a two-time #1 international best-selling author. She is a motivational speaker. She's an empowerment coach, transformational leadership trainer, and she's coached. She has over 30 years of experience in helping people achieve happiness and success. She has supported many individuals and couples, probably thousands, who knows, to develop a greater sense of self-worth, the confidence to challenge and change limiting beliefs in order to become more loving towards themselves and others. She is passionate. I'm telling you, she's so passionate about helping people, especially her clients, to achieve their full potential. But she's going to do this for you too today, to become genuinely the best self. She's learned to walk twice. We're going to talk about that story, while running an award-winning school, for the most part, from wheelchair. And the experience was, she will say, is an absolute gift to her. She left the headship of the school in 2004, and since then has worked with, again, countless individuals and couples, helping them learn lessons from their past in order to achieve happiness and fulfillment. She believes that her disability is a metaphor for life. She says, if you believe that you lack the time, money, and expertise, if you fear you are not you, or are not good enough, pretty enough, that you are too old, too young, too fat, too short, too poor, too uneducated to achieve your dream, the chances are you'll fail. Isn't that so true? Life can be incredibly challenging. Relationships, work, finances, health. Gina covers it all. She walks her talk. All the strategies she offers through her books, and she's got a few books out there. And we're going to talk to her about this one. Her work is a culmination of personal experience and decades of working with people to help them achieve personal empowerment and she has an amazing story, and we are thrilled to have her here on A New Direction. So everybody out there, will you please welcome Gina Gardiner to A New Direction? And Gina, welcome to A New Direction.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's absolutely brilliant to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, by the way, folks, if you have not picked this up, she's not from here in the U.S., okay, in case you haven't picked this up. I love this book, Thriving, Not Surviving. I told you that before we got on. I am absolutely thrilled about this book. It looks like I've had it for like 6 years. I have chewed up these pages so much. In your introduction of this book, Thriving, Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment, you start into the introduction talking about our if I were only, our lack of self-worth. And you talk about that our lack of self-worth is a modern day epidemic. When you say lack of self-worth is a modern day epidemic in the middle of a pandemic, help us understand why our lack of self-worth is epidemic nature.
Everything starts with you. Each one of us is the common denominator in our lives, and we're with us from the moment of conception until we die. And ultimately, how we think about ourselves, the level of self-worth that we have, is something that's going to colour our experience in every area of our lives. Because if you believe that you are not enough, and I use I'm not educated enough, I'm too fat, too thin, too tall, I'm too young, I'm too old, then in a way that you just keep yourself completely stuck in the place of being a victim. You become less resourced. And I think we need to make a distinction very early on between being self-confident and having a sense of self-worth and ego. Because there's nothing about ego in terms of having a true sense of self-worth. It's recognizing that if you step into your genuine power, that you don't want to play small. Because in my experience, as many people fear success as fear failure. You own your skills and talents, but you also recognize that there is the capacity to be even better. And that you see life as a journey and an opportunity to learn. And that if you are truly stepping into your power, it's not about diminishing somebody else. I'm more powerful than you, therefore you're smaller and less important than me. When you step into your genuine power, then you see the potential in others and you want to nurture and grow those too, so that they too can shine their light. And for me, whether you're talking about leading your own life, leading your family, leading in a professional sense, for me it's all about having integrity, having compassion for yourself and others, and having the courage to do what's right. And that all starts with that sense of self-worth, because every relationship you have with other people is a reflection of the relationship you have with you.
That's beautiful. Wow. Wait, I just throw you a pitch, right? And then you just knock one out of the park right off the bat. That's wow. That's beautiful, and I love it. Okay, I love it. What a great start. Gina Gardiner, Thriving, Not Surviving. So Gina, wow, I'm blown away by that. Gina, the thing that captured me, because I refused to read your bio before I read your book. I decided that because I didn't want to taint reading the book. I felt like, I wanted to see what the book stood up on its own. And then, of course, I read the book, and you start telling your story. And as you're telling your story, the story, of course, lures me in, and I go, holy cow. And the book just got even better. Would you mind sharing your story? Because I think it's so relevant to how your story is absolutely a key ingredient to thriving and not just surviving.
So I started teaching at the age of 21, and I'd not been very happy at school. But I found myself when I started teaching. I loved it, I was good at it, and I was promoted very quickly. And so I became the assistant principal of the largest, I think in America the equivalent would be a junior high, the largest school in the district. And I was promoted to be the catalyst for change. I was the youngest bar two on the staff, and in fact when I went to have a look around the school, I was told, we don't want you, we want a man. And they could get away with it in those days, but they wouldn't now. But I decided to apply anyway, and I got the job. And for the first 6 months, I and the principal, who was a lovely man, we worked hard to strategically develop a plan for moving the school really into a much more modern way of being. And I was really pleased to get to, in February, we have a week's holiday in schools in the UK called the spring half term. And I went off skiing. And I was a good skier, and I would go skiing 3 or 4 times in the winter rather than have a summer holiday. And so off I went to St. Anton in Austria. And in those days, the style of skis was to have as long a ski as possible. And I'd had a new pair of skis for Christmas, and I'd been convinced by the man in the shop to buy a pair of skis that was 10 centimetres longer than I was used to. And so I proceeded to wrap that 10 centimetres around itself several times during the week, and spent the whole week being tail end Charlie with the group of friends that I was with, because I was getting to grips with these skis. And on the Thursday, the penultimate day, I had quite a nasty fall, and it knocked my confidence a bit. So I said to my friends on the Friday, I'm not going to come and ski with you. I'm going to go and ski by myself, and I'm going to just get my confidence back. And they said, well, we'll meet you for lunch. We met for lunch, and they said they'd found this fabulous run, and would I like to come with them? I said, yeah, fine. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. The sun was shining, the mountains looked magnificent, and we went up on the chairlift, and I followed them, and we went round a corner, and they had stopped, and I recognised that actually something was very wrong. And far from it being the red run that was supposed to go for 5 or 6 kilometres, we were at the top of the Schindlergratz, which was the most difficult black run in St. Anton. And it was very steep, full of moguls. Now, for those who are listening who are not familiar with what moguls are, it's where the snow is being carved out by the weather. And they can often be a couple of inches, like skiing over cobbles, so it's not very comfortable. But these were 6-foot monsters. And because it was so steep, the only way to get down was to turn on the top of the mogul and slide down. And I'd skied black runs before, but nothing like this. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I skied the first third. I then had quite a bad fall, and it took me about 20 minutes to retrieve my skis and to join my friends who were further down the run, each of them sitting on a mogul, rather like an elf sitting on a mushroom. So I took my skis off and I sat on my mogul, and I'd not been there very long. And as I say, it was a beautiful day, and my mogul gave way. The top of my mogul had melted. And I started to rotate, but there was nowhere to land. And the last thing I remember was hearing a scream. I came to much further down the mountain, and I'm told I fell between 150 and 200 feet. Took a long time for my friends to ski to me, but the one good thing was, between the falls and the skiing I'd done, that we were almost at the bottom of the run. And I didn't want to use the blood wagon, and so with their help I got back to the hotel, and we travelled back the next day. My mum took one look at me, and I was carted off to accident and emergency, and I'd got a concussion, and I'd trapped a nerve in my neck. And it took me 2 or 3 weeks to get back to school. 5 or 6 weeks after the initial accident, I was the deputy leader on a ski party with 150 some school children going to Switzerland. And I was given permission to go by the medics because we were taking the doctor with us. And as the week went on, I became more and more like Quasimodo, and I was really struggling. So on the last evening, I just had to give in. And I said to my colleagues, I'm going to have to go and lie down. And I went up to my room, and within a very few minutes, I found that I was paralysed down one side. I didn't want to shout. I was worried about frightening the children, and they were milling about on the corridor. And I had to wait for somebody to come. And that wait seemed like forever. I've no idea how long it was. But once somebody did arrive, all hell broke loose, and I was carted off to the local hospital and then transferred to Geneva Hospital. And I was there for a week and then flown home to go into hospital locally. And it took me till the end of May to get back to school, by which time I could walk, but I wasn't right. I was doing school, going home, going to bed. And so I was really thrilled to get to the summer holidays and think I've got 6 weeks now that I can rest and recuperate and get myself ready back for the next term. And so the first week, 10 days went by, and I did lots of resting. And then one morning, very early, I got a phone call, and it was from my principal's wife, and she was absolutely hysterical. She had discovered John, the principal, her husband, he'd died in the night. We discovered later that he'd had a massive heart attack. So far from it being the holiday that I thought it was going to be, I helped her manage the funeral. I contacted the staff, the parents, the local authority, and I then had to get ready for the September because I was now acting principal. And in the January, I was appointed to be the permanent principal. I was 29. I was inexperienced. I'd been the deputy only for a year. But I was absolutely determined that I wanted this school to be the best learning environment, not only for the pupils, but for the staff and to some extent for the parents as well. My school was in an urban area, quite a lot of racial tension, quite an aggressive area. And I wanted our school to be an oasis, if you like. And so started my career there, and I was the head teacher there for just over 20 years. And in that time, my health fluctuated, but my mobility deteriorated, and by 1987 I was using a wheelchair to get around school. Didn't use it in my office or the classrooms, but I couldn't physically manage the site, it was too big. And then in 1996 I sneezed as I was doing something in the garden, and I felt something go in my back. And I discovered a few days later, as things deteriorated and we got to the last day of term and suddenly I couldn't put my weight through my legs, that I had ruptured a disc in my back, and I had surgery, and when I came to, I couldn't put my left foot to the floor without fainting. I'd got failed back surgery syndrome. It took me 2 years to walk to the bottom of my very little garden, and 3 months later, again the last night of the school's summer term, the staff and I went out for a meal to celebrate the end of term. And when I got home, I didn't feel very well, and I was physically sick, and I felt something go in my back, and I'd ruptured another disc. Once again, failed back surgery syndrome. This time I wasn't a very good stalk. I was completely wheelchair bound. I couldn't put my weight through my feet at all. 4 days later, I was back at school, because at home it was daytime TV. If I didn't have someone leave a cup out and fill the kettle, then I couldn't make a cup of tea. And I have to say, daytime television doesn't do it for me. But I could go to school, I could run my school, which I loved, which I was good at. I could be useful, make a positive difference. And so that had always been the order of the day, that I would get back to school as quickly as possible. 5 months later, the consultant said, I think we'll talk about you going back for a couple of hours a week. And I just laughed, because I'd been part-time for 3 weeks and then full-time thereafter. But by 2004, my health was deteriorating, and I was given an ultimatum by the neurologist that I had to leave school. Now, what I recognise is that in all of this, in all of the disability, there was a huge gift. And that gift was because I couldn't physically get I couldn't get through the door of the classrooms, most of them, and certainly I couldn't get round most of the classrooms because the wheelchair took too much room. I had to find a different way of empowering people, getting them to take radical responsibility for their own performance and a shared responsibility for the team, for the school. It was incredibly successful. We were on Her Majesty's Inspectorate publish a list each year of what they see as the 100 best schools in England. And we were on that list twice during my tenure. And I'm very proud of that.
Wow.
But I'm so proud of the team. But I also recognise that if I'd been able-bodied, the chances are I would probably not have come up with the same unique strategy for developing empowerment and leadership. I'd have probably been too controlling. But since 2004, I've used the same principles and techniques in corporate world and with businesses, mainly since 2009 with businesses, helping them to develop the same strategy within their business and as a result become more productive, more profitable, better relationships and better work-life balance.
Wow. Her name's Gina Gardiner. The book is called Thriving, Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment. And you just heard her story right here on A New Direction. Hey, folks, New Direction has a couple great sponsors, right? Epic Physical Therapy has been with us for quite a while. And guess what? They just opened up a second location in downtown, in our Research Triangle Park in downtown Raleigh. And whether you're recovering from an injury or surgery or suffering everyday aches and pains, having difficulty performing activities of daily living, or maybe unable to perform athletic activities because you're an athlete and you're just not meeting your athletic goals. Maybe you're just looking to improve how you move and feel. Look, the elite team at Epic Physical Therapy will provide you with a customized treatment plan tailored for you and your individual needs. Look, with their experience in rehabbing young athletes to professional athletes, they really do understand the need to treat the entire body as a functional whole, not just your symptoms or your injury. So when you're ready for epic relief, epic recovery, and epic results, you know what? You need to just check out the physical therapist at Epic Physical Therapy. And you just go to epicpt.com. That's EPICPT.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You know what? They have been with us from the very beginning. And you know what? Linda and her team have been helping people for 35 years. And whether it's selling homes, buying homes all over the world, they have helped people either matching them with the right professional, that's in their local area, or if you're in the Research Triangle Park, that's Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. They help people all over the Triangle, and thousands they have helped in the selling their home or buying their home. And the reason that they continue to be so successful and at the top of the game 35 years later is really because of what their clients say about them. And it's what they say about their customer service. Their clients literally say, you know what, their customer service is legendary. It's just absolutely legendary. It's untouchable. And it's because Linda, from the very beginning, when she started her career in the 80s, she really developed one relationship at a time. And it was about the relationship, not about the sale, not about, the closing. It was about developing the relationship with one client, one vendor, one person at a time. And that tradition still continues today in a world where sometimes we get so automated that the relationship doesn't matter. To them, relationships matter because they understand that your house is more than just a dollar sign. Your house is where memories are made, and those memories are important to you, and they want to treat your house like it's their house. So when you're ready, to either sell your home or buy a home, why not check out your friends, the legends of customer service at Linda Craft and Team Realtor, and you can learn Realtors, and you can learn more by going to lindacraft.com. It's LANDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with Gina Gardiner, and she just went through a phenomenal story of her life, which, by the way, is gripping, and it's a great story. But beyond the fact that it's a great story, it sets us up, Gina, I think, for I guess people want to there's a couple things. One is you've kind of set us up here to just start talking about, how do we get to the happiness to success piece? Because clearly, and you're still in a wheelchair, is that correct?
I can now walk short distances, but if I go into town or I go traveling, then yes, I still have to use a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm. So you have created this, I think you called it, it's like a woven fabric,
Yes.
is what you've called this. And before we get to the 5 principles, because I think what we're just going to have to do, Gina, is we're just going to have to bring you back at a future date to do the rest of this because it's too good. So,
Right.
you talk about initially the 7 underpinning principles. Let's talk about the 7 underpinning principles. Because we really need to start there before we can get to the 5 secrets, right? I mean, don't we?
Well, if I may just put a little bit of perspective about the 5 pathways and then go into the principles and connecting themes,
All right,
because
let's do that.
Would make sense.
Sure.
What I realised, and my previous book, which is Chariots on Fire, which was my story and the principles that I lived by, over the period of time between writing the 2 books, I'd moved on. Inevitably, life is all about moving on and developing greater understanding and a greater range of strategies and so on. And so what I recognised through working with whether it was individual life coaching clients or it was business, working with the whole businesses, teams, working with couples, is that no matter how people presented and what they came for, in some form or another, we covered each of the 5 pathways. And when I started writing the book, I was told by the pundits, you're making it too broad, you're making it too wide, concentrate on one thing. And what I believe is actually you've got to do it holistically. Because if you're working on your personal life and you don't work on your professional life, your chair is a great analogy, it's uneven, and vice versa. And so the 5 secret pathways are beliefs, relationships, success and how we view success and how we're motivated, our choices and how we manage change, and purpose and fulfillment. But what I recognized was that it didn't matter which of those you were looking at, there were some other things that actually ran through everything, rather like the foundation, if you will. And so I thought, well, how do I represent that? Because they are so interwoven, and it seemed to me that they were like the warp and weft of fabric, and that fabric acted as a sling which underpinned the 5 pathways. So if you think about the principles, the underpinning principles, and there are 7, and the first of those is permission. And I want, if you are listening to this, think about whose permission in your head are you asking before you do things? Are you asking of yourself? Are you giving yourself permission to do things? And it's a really interesting concept, because when people start to give themselves permission to do things differently, to step out of their comfort zone, it acts as a key unlocking the door. But very often it's not their own permission that they're seeking. It's a parent or it's their partners, and not necessarily in reality, but just in terms of the voice that's going on in their head. And so having permission to fly, to shine, to succeed is really important. But then your perspective on life becomes your reality. You're in a park, there's a dog, there's 2 people. The dog approaches one person and they start to squeal and wave their arms about because their belief is that all dogs are dangerous because they were bitten at the age of 2. The dog moves away and it moves towards the other person who welcomes it and gives it a pat and a stroke because it knows how to deal with dogs, because it's had dogs all their life, and their belief is that all dogs are friendly. Their perspectives are different. It's the same dog, but because our perspective then drives how we behave, how we think, it makes a huge difference. So if you shift your perspective and if you're prepared to take a step back, to take a new look, a fresh look at things, have a different perspective, then very often things change significantly. What you focus on seems to expand. And that's been a really good thing for me, because I've always focused on what I can do rather than what I can't do. And as a result, it's meant that my life has been less limited. But if I may, I'd like to share a story with you. It was a pivotal moment for me. I'd left being a principal, and I'd started working for myself. Initially did a research project across businesses to see if the issues facing those businesses in terms of leadership were the same as we had in education. And of course they were, because we're talking about people. But I wanted to study NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And so I'd studied with the same organisation to do my practitioner, my master's, and then my coaching, although I was already a qualified coach. And when I finished, I decided that because I'd used the same organisation, I was going to see as many people using NLP as I could. And I went off to watch Tony Robbins, and I'm sure many of your listeners will be very familiar with Tony Robbins. But at that time, my view was huge American, very loud, very big, lots of hype, and I wonder how much substance there is. So I have to be very honest, and I went to the program, and I was very cynical about that this was going to have anything really to offer me. How wrong could I be? And I arrived at, talk about perceptions, I arrived at the Excel Centre in London, which is a conference centre, and there were 10,000 people on the course. I mean, that in itself is just mind-blowing. And I liked what I heard in that first morning, and he was talking about a course that he was running in California, and I dismissed it out of hand. Now, you need to bear in mind that while I was a serving principal, I worked for the government as an advisor, and I went all over the place, working with other schools. I was a trainer facilitator for the National College and for the London Institute, not all at the same time, but I did that to bring a budget into school and to keep the school at cutting edge. And lots of people had said to me, well, you know, to do that and run a school and to be away from school and you're in a wheelchair, isn't that amazing? And what I realised is that if I went to California, I didn't have an electric travel chair in those days, how would I manage? And I just dismissed it. Later on that day, we did the fire walk. Now, for those who don't know about the fire walk, you walk about 25, 30 feet on hot coals, in bare feet, and if you're in the right mindset, you don't get burnt. Please don't try this at home.
No, don't, please. I don't want to hear from you. If you tried this, this is on your own volition. You did not do this because we said so. All right, go ahead. Anyway,
I was thrilled that with some help, this is 2006, and I could walk 4 or 5 steps unaided, because in 2004 I had a spinal stimulator fitted internally, but very, very slow progress. And I was really thrilled that with somebody holding my arm both sides, I managed to do the fire walk, which is the furthest I'd walked since 1996, and we're now in 10 years.
Wow.
And as I sat back in my wheelchair, absolutely thrilled to little mint balls that I'd done it, the guy behind me was a double amputee. He had no legs below the knee. He turned himself up onto his hands, and he walked those hot coals on his hands. I was blown away. And I thought, if he can do that, I'm self-limiting. That night, I booked my ticket and I booked my flight. I went off to California, did the course. I've done all of Tony Robbins' courses. I became a senior leader. Since then, I've travelled the world for work, speaking, and for pleasure. I am forever grateful for that man. Don't know who he was, but he changed my life. And because I've shared this story, I know from the feedback I've got, it's made people think about how they self-limit. And my challenge to your listeners is, have a think about how often you say, I can't do that because, or I've already tried that, didn't work. How often are you self-limiting because either you're frightened that you might fail or you're frightened that you might succeed? So the next pathway is that of love. We live in a world that's full of fear and hatred and division. And for me, love is not about pink and fluffy. If you love somebody, you expect the best of them and you want the best for them.
Right.
For me, coming from a place of love rather than a place of fear means that you have all of your resources available to you, and that you are going to use kindness and compassion rather than division and hate. And I don't think we've ever needed it more than we do at the moment.
Amen.
So the next pathway is that of forgiveness. And I believe, holding on to the grudge, the hurt, is like giving yourself the poison and expecting the other person to die. And I think it's really important to recognize that forgiveness doesn't mean that you condone the action, nor does it mean that you forget. But in clipping the chains that hold you chained back to the abuse, the unkindness, the thing that hurt you, gives you the freedom to have an amazing present and a wonderful future. And I've done a lot of work now with abused people. And I know that forgiveness is something, it's the biggest gift that you can give yourself. But in order to move forward, you not only have to forgive the perpetrator of whatever it was, but you also have to forgive yourself. And for me, one of the most powerful things that can help recalibrate our brain, and before this we started the formal interview, we were talking about how our brains are a bit like an old-fashioned vinyl record and get stuck in the groove. One of the ways to positively recalibrate the brain is that of gratitude. And, if we are grateful and we collect gratitudes each day, the quality of our life just changes. And the last underpinning principle is that of playfulness. And I think we need to be more childlike, not childish. Because if you look at a young child learning to walk, their playfulness about even, the things that they find challenging, learning to walk, they do it and they giggle and they may cry for a minute, but they get up and they keep going. And they have an awe and wonder and curiosity about the world. And if we could recapture that, I think life can be so different. But it is important that it is childlike and not childish.
Wow. Well, I did not expect, because, we've got other things that we do, but you've kind of just jumped. I love this. I'm sitting back here in stunned silence, just going, wow. I don't have to say anything. I'm just like, on go. Just go, because I don't want to say anything here. I don't want to disrupt the vibe, because these are amazing principles. And I have to be honest with you, Gina. When I was reading through these, and I'm going to tell you something. Forgiveness there's two. Well, they're all huge, but two that are like at the top of my list if I were to order them. The first one is forgiveness for me, because I am I've written books on social media, and one of the things that is a consistent theme in social media is people who have been hurt and abused in a relationship, right? And they're so hurt that they refuse to trust any. Their matter of fact, their signature is trust no one, trust nobody, right? And my wife says this to me. And you said it in the book, and it was funny because I wrote laugh out loud because you both think the same way. She always says, when unforgiveness is exactly the same thing that you said. It's like drinking the poison and hoping the other person dies. It's just what we think. And the truth of the matter is, when we don't forgive, they're still controlling us. And that anger that we have towards them isn't hurting them at all.
No, they carry on, don't they? Regardless, they have no idea.
And so then what we do is we keep damaging, we keep scarring ourselves with our own unforgiveness. And it's really, and you've heard this, right? Because you've coached, like I have, tons of people. How many times have you heard somebody say to you, well, you don't know what I've been through, Gina?
Absolutely. Yep. And the answer is, no, I don't. However, it's your choice. Everything we do is a choice.
Right.
But every choice has consequences. Right. And if you choose to hold on to that hurt, you're going to choose to be a victim. And that will colour your life until you let go of being a victim. The interesting thing is that as people learn, and I absolutely accept it's not easy, but as people recognize that by forgiving someone else for whatever it is, and it could be a small thing or something monumental, that when you forgive them, your gift is not to them. You're giving that gift to you, because that frees you from staying stuck in the past. I mean, otherwise, it's like carrying this heavy portmanteau strapped to one ankle, and you've got to drag it with you wherever you go.
That's so true. Her name is Gina Gardiner. The book is called Thriving, Not Surviving, and you're listening to her here on A New Direction. You know, we are so grateful here at A New Direction that we have two of the most outstanding sponsors we could have ever hoped for. And Epic Physical Therapy, which is our newest sponsor, but they've been with us a long time. Listen, they're my physical therapist. I love them. I've had knee surgeries, shoulder surgeries. I've had my shoulder rebuilds. I've had knee replacement. I have been more injured because, you know what the truth of the matter is? I refuse to grow old, and so I push my body to all sorts of limits. And you know what the truth is? Even though I do that, they have all the equipment and the experience and the certifications to get me going right back so that I can do my workouts hard, right? Look, Epic Physical Therapy offers the most advanced top-of-the-line equipment. They have things like the Ultra G anti-gravity treadmill so that you can run without putting pressure on your joints. They have the Normatec compression sleeves, which are great. And then the Game Ready, my favorite, you hear me talk about all the time, freezing cold water and pressure, whether it's leg or shoulder, and it's just amazing. That's just a few. And you know, the other thing is that they're trained and certified in the most comprehensive, cutting edge, not just cutting edge, bleeding edge treatments available, including blood flow restriction therapy, great stuff, dry needling, one of my favorites, and then cupping, which I love too, which manipulates the muscle through the skin with these little cups. Absolutely fantastic. Look, if you're ready for your epic relief, if you're ready for your epic recovery, and you're ready for your epic results, you know what? There's not just one place that you can go. Now there's two places that you can actually hit here in the Triangle area. Why not check out my friends and the people who get me back on my feet and get me working out again, the folks at Epic Physical Therapy. And you can do that by going to epicpt.com. That's epicpt.com. And Linda Craft and Team Realtors. You know what? 35 years. You know what? They have been developing relationships one at a time, and they've served thousands of people. Matter of fact, her first clients from 1985, do you know what? They still come to see her. They still come to see her. That's since 1985. Her first clients still come to see her. Why would your first clients continue to come to see you? You know why? It's because you developed a relationship. It's not because you sold their home for the most money, or perhaps you did. But it's because the relationship was so powerful and so important. And that's really what's more important to Linda Craft and Team Realtors. Yes, they're going to sell your home for, you know, the highest amount of value. And yes, they're going to do it in the shortest amount of time. And yes, they're going to take the stress out of it, because that's why their clients say that their customer service is legendary, right? I mean, they're going to do all those things that you would expect. But the difference is that the relationship is numero number one. It is the absolute number one thing that's important to them, and that is that they want to develop something with you that lasts a lifetime, not just a sale. And so if you're ready to develop a relationship with a realtor who cares about your home as much as you do, then maybe it's time that you start with Linda Craft and Team Realtors. They've helped people all over the world. And you can do that by going to lindacraft.com. That's LINDACRAFT.com. And we're back here on A New Direction with fabulous friend and author of the book Thriving, Not Surviving, Gina Gardiner, and she is joining us here. And wow, we're just having a great time. And so, Gina, we're talking about forgiveness. The other big one that I really love is gratitude. I am a gratitude guy, and you talk in your book about collecting gratitudes. And we have two slightly different views on this, and not dramatically different. But I am a person who, and maybe this is because we talked about you being more of a night person and I'm an early morning person, but I like to tell people to, when they first wake up in the morning, is to write down 5 to 7 things that you're grateful for. And the reason, and I like people keeping a journal of doing this, and the reason why I like people doing that is because as you go through the day, regardless of what happens today, when you go to sleep at night, you can open up that journal, and those 5 to 7 things that you were grateful for in the morning, regardless of what happened in your day, are still there, and you're still grateful for them in the evening. You have a little bit different approach.
Well, it's only one approach.
Right.
I mean, as part of the Thrive Together tribe and the Thriving Not Surviving program, there is a journal, and it's suggested that people fill their journal out, and that part of their journal is that in each day there's a thank bank, and their thank bank is gratitudes and to note their gratitudes. And most people that I know of journal at the beginning of the day. So collecting gratitudes is just one strategy, and it's one that I get many clients to do. Those clients who are depressed, who see the negative in everything, who focus on lack rather than focusing on what they have. And the reason I ask them to collect those gratitudes during the day, and it's not a one thing, but to collect them and to make it easy to collect. So, that every time you have a cup of tea that you enjoy, or you see a beautiful tree, or the phone goes and it's a friend, or you have great plumbing, that you feel grateful in that moment, because it recalibrates you being in the moment. Because when you are in the moment, you can't worry about the past or be anxious about the future.
Right.
When you are in the moment, it starts to make you see the world in a different way. So I think the ideal thing is to do both. It's not an either or.
Right.
But the moment by moment, taking the time to notice things, I think is really important. And in a way, it brings us beautifully onto the connecting themes. And the first one of that is being mindful. Because 95% of everything that we think, say, and do is habitual. Doesn't cross our conscious minds at all for most people. And so one of the strengths of collecting gratitude during the day is you have to be mindful. You have to be consciously thinking to do it. And so it's an exercise not just in gratitude, but also in mindfulness and in a whole, using powerful language, which is another one of the connecting themes, to yourself. But instead of using negative language all the time, that you're actually looking for opportunities to notice and to focus on positive things.
This mindfulness, I am a big proponent here that we are so self-unaware.
Yes.
And as I work with my clients and I just want to get them just even a little bit aware, because we just kind of go through our day, right? We wake up, we drink our coffee or your tea, and then we go do this, we go do that, we go from this appointment to that appointment, and we go around and around. Then we come home, we grab a pizza lunch, and then we go back out, we do our thing, we got the phone calls, we got all this, and then check the email, go back through, eat dinner, then we go do a little bit of that, and then maybe throw on the tube for a little bit, and then we go to sleep, and then we wake up, we do the whole thing all over again.
Yeah. Don't you think it's interesting that we're called human beings?
When you said that in the book, I cracked up because it's like we are human doings. We're not human beings, we're human doings. And you're so correct in that assessment, because we are so we have a hard time, those of us who are hard workers, right, and believe that we can do it, we can go harder and even harder, and we could do it longer and louder, and right, and because we believe that we just can. What happens is we get to a point where we don't know what to do when we're not doing something.
No. As a recovering workaholic, and make that very, very clear. And for me, work was great pain control, and it took me a long time to recognise that actually that I had switched my body off completely. And there was a very good reason for that. I didn't want, when I was doing things that I liked, didn't hurt. But ultimately, I think that probably the hardest thing that we do is to be comfortable to be with ourselves, no distractions, and to just sit in that quiet. And it's there that you find magic. And I have to say, I've not mastered it. Been a lifelong journey for me, and I struggle to be still and quiet because I am a busy person. But ultimately, it's in those moments that you get the opportunity to really connect with that inner wisdom. Now, I do it intuitively with my clients. I find no problem at all in sitting in the silence and listening to them. But when I do it for myself, I find that that's much more difficult. But I think it's something that's so worth doing.
Well, it doesn't matter what the addiction is, right? We're on some level, we're self-medicating.
Yes, whether it's food, alcohol, drugs, shopping, sex, work.
Right.
We all have something that we use that helps us manage the challenges of our lives, don't we?
And then we rationalize it in the same way. So let's just, let's take work. We'll rationalize work in the same way we would rationalize, a drug or whatever. Or alcohol. We'd go, I got to have it. You don't understand. If I don't have it, I'm not going to make money. And if I don't make money, I'm not going to survive, right? So then we justify working harder and working more hours. And meanwhile, we're getting out of balance. Our relationships are starting to fall apart, and right, we're not doing the things that we need to do. And all of a sudden, our spiritual life starts to drop. Our mental life may be in a good shape, but emotionally, we're starting to go bad. And then, like most people who are in business who work too much, the first thing they give up is their physical life because they eat, bad food. And I think you call them takeaways. We call it takeout, or go through the drive-through. And we eat horrible food, as an excuse to not work out so that we can work more. And then it numbs us, and we get numb.
I do think it's important to make the distinction between people who are working long hours because they're badly paid, right, and they're doing it to survive,
right,
and those people who work long hours because the working gives them something, and is, if you like, the anesthetic. And I would suggest for most people the anesthetic is because emotionally they're hurting, right, or spiritually they're hurting. They could, for me, it was very much around physical pain, although I suspect that the others were involved as, right, well. And I think there are many people who work unspeakable hours because that's the way they've got enough to scrape together the rent and to buy food, and that would not actively be their way of being if, right, they felt they had an alternative. Right. But ultimately, I think we have, as I say, everything we do is a choice, and I think as we move out of the pandemic and lockdown, I don't think we're going to go into what was the old norm. There's an opportunity for a paradigm shift. And I think part of that is, certainly in the UK, many people are talking about how they have reassessed what's important in their lives, that they've recognized that it's relationships that are important and not material things. So one of the things that strikes me is that 10 weeks ago, it would have been unthinkable to think that the general population would be really overtly valuing porters in hospitals and the cooks in hospitals and nurses and doctors and people in the food chain. And in the UK, every Thursday night for the last 10 weeks, people in their millions have gone out onto the streets, socially distancing, clapping and banging saucepans to say a big thank you. Previously, if you didn't eat worms in the jungle as a reality star, or you weren't a footballer, or you weren't a movie star or a musician, you didn't get recognition.
Right.
Things have shifted, and I do hope that the shift to less junk values and more real, deep-held values that move us forward, that enrich us, I'm hopeful that will continue. Although I have to say, having seen some of the scenes, not just in America now, but elsewhere, it is something that I hope that we will see resolved.
Normally, Gina, I ask my friends to give a new direction to the listeners as we end, because we've been on for an hour, but you just did it. You really did. You just gave it, and I could not ask any more from you. And I am bringing you back. If you want, if you would like to be on this show again, I would love to bring you back to talk more about this book.
I'd love to.
I want more people to hear you, and I want more people to hear your book because they need it. The book is called Thriving, Not Surviving, The 5 Secret Pathways to Happiness, Success, and Fulfillment. It is available at bookstores everywhere. It is available on Amazon. It's available in all sorts of different ways. By the way, I'm going to be doing my blog write-up of this book that's going to be associated with the podcast. So if you will check it out, it will have all of her backlinks to not just the book, but also backlinks to her website that you can be part of the tribe,
and your coffee's cold.
Which is connected to a
Life is
Facebook
not
page.
what you want it to be.
It's absolutely
You
brilliant
need
stuff.
another chance to be who you want to be. Yeah. You say that things don't ever change.
Get it.
Tomorrow's looking just like
Folks,
today.
that's the show. You know what I say
You
to
cheated
you,
by
right?
your
Every week, right? Be
circumstance.
inspired, because when
You
you're
can't
inspired,
leave your life to
inspire others
chance.
in turn, and then they
The
can
time
inspire
has
others as well.
come
It's
for you to go.
You know, I'm going to have another great guest, another great show.
A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change.
Ciao.
You can find the strength to go a different way, yeah. The time has come for a new direction. Yeah, yeah. New direction. Yeah, yeah. When you lost your confidence and the answers don't make sense, you got to keep your hope alive. You got to know you can survive. This is your time to fly. A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change. You can find the strength to go a different way, yeah. The time has come. Your dreams will take you places you have never been before. Find your passion, find your strength. Don't worry anymore. A new direction. A new direction. A new direction, a brand new day. A new direction, things are gonna change. You can